Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino Ciao, a new kind of flavored sparkling water. The kind made with real fruit juice, a pinch of Sicilian salt, and the sparkle of the Italian sun. With no added sugar and just 10 or less calories per can, enjoy. With love, from Italy. By San Pellegrino Ciao now.
This is the FPL Draft Zone, your fantasy team's best signing of the season.
Is FPL Draft ever going to launch? I don't know. I do not know. But while we're waiting, we're going to talk early game weeks. How can you take advantage of those opening matches and put a marker down in your draft league? Hello and welcome to the FPL Draft Zone, a podcast all about draft FPL. I'm Dom Crofts. I hope you are well. And yes, we are still waiting for FPL to pull their finger out and launch this year's game. It has now been over a week since Classic FPL got its moment in the spotlight, and yet still draft managers are waiting for their moment in the sun. Still, draft managers are asking for clarity on what is actually happening, and still, there is nothing but radio silence from FPL towers. It is pretty poor, to be honest, and taking the biscuit was today's launch of FPL Challenge before they launched Draft. Draft managers have, let's be honest, always been treated as the poor relation to classic FPL managers, but the very least they could do is put us in ahead of Challenge. The very least they could do is at least keep us informed on what is happening, and they haven't even done that. Commissioners have leagues to sort, managers have drafts that are scheduled, and at the moment everything remains up in the air with no information at the time of recording. It is irritating. So while we wait for Draft to be launched, we thought we would focus on the early game weeks and ask how important is it to target players with good opening fixtures on draft night. In classic FPL, you have the advantage of transfers and chips to change your side, and so managers can really target those opening games and structure their squads to take advantage of early matches. But in draft, obviously your approach needs to be a little more long-term. A lot of the players you draft on draft night are hopefully going to be season keepers, so you cannot go overboard on those early game week fixtures. But that does not mean you cannot give yourself the best chance of taking advantage of them with a clever couple of late round pickups. Before we get started on this subject, I just want to remind you to subscribe to the pod if you haven't already. It's the best way to stay across the show. If you'd like to, we would love it if you could leave us a 5-star review and a nice comment on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And of course, we always love to hear from you on social media as well. So give us a follow on X and on Instagram, where we're at FPL Draft Zone, and on Blue Sky as well, where we are at fpldraftzone.bsky.social. Right, let's take a look at those opening game weeks and see how we can leverage them to help your draft side smash it in those early weeks of the season. As we've already said, the approach to the first few weeks of the campaign differs greatly in classic FPL to draft FPL, but just because we don't have chips to help us out doesn't mean those early matches aren't important. If you end up with 2 or 3 players in your draft squad who are not your popular picks, but who you correctly predict will start the season with a bang, you've not just given yourself a good start to the season and set yourself up for what hopefully will be a very successful campaign, but you've also given yourself more strength when it comes to potential trades. And that good start that you're going to get is also going to put a lot of pressure on your rivals to react, and fast. And that means they could make mistakes and bin off players that they thought were going to be good early and before they have hit their peak, giving you a chance to grab them on those waivers. Now, the dream when you're choosing these late round picks on draft night is to find an unfashionable player who no one is really thinking about, but who ends up becoming a constant in your squad as a result of their form. Someone like Liam Delap is a good example from last season. If you picked him up, you probably had very low expectations, and yet if you picked him up, you probably kept him all season long. But more realistically, the players you sign with those early games in mind are going to be there to get you on the right path, but in all likelihood, they will not be there when you are lifting that title at the end of the season. And the players we're going to be discussing today are the sort of players we think you'll be able to get in the later rounds of your draft night, players who are not being prioritised by other managers, but who could make the difference in those opening few game weeks. They are not the sort of players who you are going to want to keep all season long. Now, looking at the early fixtures this year, the teams who have the strongest starts to the season include Aston Villa, who start with a home game against a Newcastle United who appear to be in disarray. They then have games away at Brentford, a home game to Crystal Palace, they're away at Everton, away at Sunderland, and then they're at home to Fulham. That's their first 6 games. The sort of Villa assets that will be targeted in those early rounds will be the likes of Ollie Watkins and Morgan Rogers. But beyond them, you've got every chance of picking up someone like Yuri Tielemans in the latter rounds. He got 10 attacking returns last season. He finished the campaign particularly strongly, and he will not be on every manager's wish list. Another to keep an eye on, Donyell Marlon, who has started pre-season very well indeed. If he can cement a place in Villa's first team, he could be a very astute bit of business. And with no Marcus Rashford at Aston Villa anymore, he should get more minutes. And defensively, even though Villa weren't great last year, someone like a Lucas Digne or maybe an Ian Maatsen could also be a clever pickup early on. Digne was the first choice predominantly last season at left back, but I do fancy this to be a bit of a breakout campaign for Maatsen. I've said it before, I will die on this hill. He finished the season really well last year, and his attacking output does have the potential to be outrageous. So keep an eye on who gets the nod in pre-season over the next few games and react accordingly. And if you want to play it a bit safer than gambling on a left back, someone like an Ezri Konsa would make perfect sense. He could benefit from the new defensive contribution rules, and he is the most certain of all Aston Villa's defenders to start week in, week out. Bournemouth are another team to keep an eye on. They have the worst possible start to the season with a game away at Liverpool, but then it's a home match against Wolves and matches at home to Brighton and away at Leeds in their first 6. Unless you get them in early, you can rule out Semenyo, you can rule out Kluivert, and you can rule out Evan Nielsen. But the next tier of Bournemouth assets is still pretty good in terms of short-term punts. Marcus Tavernier is an Iraola favourite. He got 10 attacking returns last season. Dango Utara will get plenty of minutes all season long. He got 7 goals and 4 assists last year, and he's been amongst the goals in pre-season already. And if no one picks him up early, Adrian Trufer could also be a standout pick from the Cherries. Everton, well, they're another side worth looking at. They have Liverpool away in game week 5, which is not that nice. But it's games against Leeds, Brighton, Wolves, and a home match against Aston Villa as well. I would not expect many Everton assets to go early on in draft night outside of Iliman Ndiaye and their new striker, Tierno Barry. And there's plenty of potential for defensive returns in those early fixtures for the Toffees. A lot of managers may be drawn to James Tarkowski because of how defensive contributions would have impacted his points total last season. But Jared Branthwaite would also have benefited hugely from those new rules, and he may not be quite as highly regarded by rival managers. I think he has a bit of a reputation as being injury prone as well, but at the moment he seems like he's going to be fit for the start of the season. Mykolenko had a solid season as well with 4 attacking returns, and despite missing a large chunk of the season through injury, Dwight McNeil had a quietly excellent season too. Yes, his name is Dwight. Dwight is not a great name, but 4 goals and 8 assists from just 1,366 minutes. That works out at 12 attacking returns in the equivalent of just 15 games. So he is very much someone who may not be on everyone's radar, but who has been a solid FPL performer now for the past 3 seasons. And you know what he screams to me? He screams a late round 5th midfielder signing. Manchester City also have a nice start to the season with games against Wolves, Brighton, Manchester United and Burnley in their first 6. Obviously, a lot of their assets will be taken early, but someone like Savinho or Doku may well be worth rolling the dice on late on as that 5th midfield option, just so you've got some City cover for those opening fixtures. However, if I was going to choose anyone to target, I think I would choose Rodri. He could be a very clever signing if you can get it over the line, given the new defensive contributions rule, but also given the fact that in his last full season for the club, and of course he missed all of last season pretty much with injury, but the season before he got 8 goals and 10 assists, ending the campaign on 159 points. And if those defensive contribution rules had existed in that season, he would have ended on 191 points, which last season would have made him the 4th highest scoring midfielder in the entire game. Defensively, Manchester City tend to frustrate a little bit, but there is definitely some clean sheet potential in those opening game weeks with the fixtures that they have. Vardiol and Aït-Nouri are nailed. They will be taken early. Forget about it. But a Diaz or an Akanji could be worth picking up with a view to those easier openers. Nottingham Forest were brilliant last season, and I think the general view is that they will not be able to replicate that form this season. Their results fell off a cliff towards the end of the campaign. They've lost Anthony Elanga as well, but their opening fixtures give them a great chance of a strong start. They have Brentford at home on the opening weekend, then it is Crystal Palace away and West Ham at home. Then they have a tricky game week 4 fixture against Arsenal, but that is followed up by games against Burnley and Sunderland. So getting in Forest assets seems like a very obvious move to me. Murillo and Milenkovic will be in high demand because of the difference those defensive contributions would have made to their points tallies last season. But it goes without saying that if either are still available in those latter rounds, get them in because those fixtures are just too good to ignore. If they have been taken, an Ola Aina or a Nico Williams are other strong early season assets. And further up the pitch in midfield, Elliot Anderson is another defensive contributions beast, potentially. Callum Hudson-Odoi also looks like he might be a decent roll of the dice because Forest need to strengthen their options on the wing. They are in the process of doing so, but given that Hudson-Odoi is used to the way the side plays and he is an established first-team player who has had all of pre-season to get fit and firing, I am pretty sure he will start the season for Nuno's side. Spurs are another team to target. Again, you've got no hope of picking up a Solanke or a Kudos later on. They will be drafted in those opening rounds, but given the form Spurs showed last season, I do not think many managers will be prioritising a Spurs defender or a Mickey van der Ven, for example, on draft night. And yet under Thomas Frank, I would expect Spurs to improve defensively, and I think that van der Ven could be one of the main beneficiaries from this new defensive contributions rule. Nathan Collins was a star performer in that regard under Frank last season, and van der Ven could follow in his footsteps. Udogie has more attacking potential than Van der Ven, and maybe a bit of a forgotten man at Spurs after his injury issues last season, although Jed Spence may get the nod, so keep an eye on those pre-season lineups to see who Frank favours. Udogie is also carrying a knock right now, apparently, so maybe Spence is the play there. And then Spurs have a host of attacking options which make drafting the right one tricky. You would imagine Solanke and Kudus will definitely start. I suspect Brennan Johnson will also line up in that front three, but that doesn't mean that a Tell or even a Richarlison are not worth considering for those early games. Richarlison is always capable of getting a return off the bench when he's fit, albeit he's very rarely fit. But given the lack of forwards in the game, he will be picked up in a 10-team league late on, based purely on the way he played once upon a time at Everton. And Tell, well, he's going to be looking to cement a place in that Spurs starting 11. And if you get him, and if he does, he could be one of those players you took a punt on, but who turn out to be draft gold and who you do keep all season long. One other side to keep in mind for those opening weeks, by the way, is Sunderland, who are likely to have a difficult season, and they are surely going to be in a big old relegation battle. But it is not unknown for newly promoted sides to start well before becoming terrible. We saw that with Luton a couple of seasons ago, and like Sunderland, no one expected them to do anything either. And you cannot ignore Sunderland's fixtures. They start with a home game against West Ham. They then go to another newly promoted side in Burnley, and then it is Brentford at home. After that, it does get a bit tougher, but those opening three fixtures are well worth targeting. Simon Adingra is one player that the Black Cats have invested in this summer, and he will be the biggest fish in the Sunderland pond, so he could turn out to be a bit of a talisman for them. Chemsdean Talby is another winger they've spent money on. 20 million euros he costs, so see what impact he has in pre-season and have him in the back of your mind as well late on. He actually assisted Adingra for his goal earlier this week. And Dennis Churkin is probably the pick of their defenders if you want to go there. And of course, we cannot not mention Chelsea Football Club, whose fixtures are very good too. Crystal Palace, West Ham, Fulham and Brentford in their first four. The usual suspects, Cole Palmer, João Pedro, Liam Delap, they're all going to go early on. But keep an eye out for Enzo as a potential mid to late round pickup. 6 goals and 8 assists for him last season. He had a very strong Club World Cup. He is one of the first names on the team sheet right now, and he is playing very, very well. Reece James is a player who will get injured and is not a player I would ever target long-term in draft, but if he stays fit in pre-season as a late-round pick for those early games, I would expect him to be a decent pickup. As for their more attacking assets, it's a bit of a lottery as to who gets the nod out of a Neto and a Gittins and a Willian, but I imagine they will all share minutes most weeks, so if you're prepared to take that risk, the option is there for you. You could still see a return from a 20-minute cameo.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle. Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue, subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
The McDonald's snack wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch snack wrap. Spicy snack wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
So, in terms of your late round plays on draft night, those are a few teams and a few players to target, but do your own homework as well, because your concept of what is an easier fixture may well differ from mine, and there may be other teams and other players that come to light as a result of that research who may well help you get that start to the new season that you're looking for and that, of course, you deserve. Now, when you're bringing in short-term picks for early fixtures, there are 2 approaches you can take. The one we have discussed is to get in players for blocks of game, 2, 3, or 4 weeks at a time, and then ditch them. Or you could tweak your squad each and every week and use the waivers to play the fixtures on a weekly basis. Now, that is definitely something that will happen as the season goes by, but I would be looking at blocks of games for draft night if you can, just to avoid missing out on targets further down the line. Just because they're on the waivers does not mean you will definitely get them on the waivers. Another approach, though, that you could take is to bring in 2 defenders, or a goalkeeper and a defender, and a 5th midfielder from teams that have good early fixtures, but make sure that those players rotate well with each other. So 1 week you can play 4 at the back to accommodate a defender with the best fixture, and 1 week you can play 5 in midfield to take advantage of your 5th midfielder's good fixture. So a few teams to consider as good rotation options include Spurs and Aston Villa. Having players who you can switch in and out from those 2 teams would see a possible early fixture run of Burnley at home for Spurs, Brentford away for Villa, Bournemouth at home for Spurs, Everton and Sunderland away for Villa, and then Wolves at home for Spurs in the first 6 games. So a Van der Ven and someone like Yuri Tielemans may be a very profitable double there. Spurs and Crystal Palace also have good fixtures from a rotational point of view. Get a couple of options from those sides, and you're looking at a fixture run of Burnley at home for Spurs, Forest at home for Palace, Bournemouth at home for Spurs, Sunderland at home and West Ham away for Palace, and Wolves at home for Spurs. So maybe take a gamble on a Tell and get in a Gahey if you can. And the Forest and Villa rotation is another that works. That would give you an opening fixture run of Brentford at home for Forest, and then Brentford away for Villa in the first 2 game weeks, then West Ham at home for Forest, Everton away for Villa, and Burnley away and Sunderland at home for Forest. So again, maybe a Forest defender and a Villa midfielder would work well there. 2 more rotation options for you, and then a few that do rotate well, but I would try to avoid, or at the very least keep in your back pocket. First up, Everton and Crystal Palace. Getting in a couple of rotation options from these sides would see a possible fixture run of Leeds away, Brighton at home, and Wolves away, all for Everton. Then Sunderland at home and West Ham away for Palace, and then West Ham at home for Everton. Or you could go, and spoiler alert, I really like this one, for a rotation pairing of Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth assets. Now that would see an opening run of Brentford at home for Forest, Wolves at home for Bournemouth, West Ham at home for Forest, Brighton at home for Bournemouth, and then Burnley and Sunderland at home for Nottingham Forest. That is a very strong run. So a Tavernier and an Aina, or a Hudson-Odoi and a Senesi should see you reap some serious rewards. There are other pairings that do rotate well, but in my opinion, those pairings involve teams I would want to avoid. So I'm not going to run through the fixtures for you, but I will run through the pairings just in case you want to look them up yourself. They are Spurs and Wolves. I don't fancy Wolves. Spurs and Burnley. I do not fancy Burnley. Everton and Wolves. I do not fancy Wolves. Brentford and Bournemouth. I do not fancy Brentford. West Ham and Sunderland. I'll be honest with you, as a combination, I don't fancy either of them. Spurs and Leeds. I do not fancy Leeds. And Wolves and Brighton. And yes, guess what, folks? I do not fancy Wolves. Rotational pairings, though, are definitely worth looking at on draft night. They can help you get that good start you're looking for if you play draft night correctly. But I personally would avoid teams you don't think are going to do the business this season. So that is why I would not recommend those pairings I've just mentioned, because in my opinion, they feature at least one team that is going to struggle this year. So there we have it. If you are looking to jump on those early fixtures and make them work for you, hopefully this episode has given you a little bit of food for thought. And let's face it, what else is there to do while FPL continue to fanny about not releasing the game that we all love? A reminder of the headlines: go for players in later rounds from teams with good early runs. Hopefully you've been taking notes, but if not, listen again for specific player names. Look at rotational pairings and go for players whose early fixtures complement each other. use your bench, use your squad depth, and where necessary, use the waivers to stock up on short-term assets who can win big for you over a limited period of time, and then be ruthless and bin them off. And treat those opening game weeks like a massive mind game. Utilize short-term strategy and short-term pickups with the potential to bang. Get in your rival manager's head early by getting points on the board early. So there we have it. That is how we would use those final draft positions to benefit your title hopes. Let us know if you agree with us. You can get in touch with us on X and Instagram, where our handle is @FPL Draft Zone. We're also on Blue Sky @FPLDraftZone.bsky.social. Or, if you want to go old school, we even have an email. FPLDraftZone@outlook.com. But that is it for today's show. Hopefully by the time you hear this, the draft version of FPL will finally have launched, or at the very least, FPL will have deemed to tell us what is actually going on. If and when it does launch, we will of course be back with another pod. But until next time, it is bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.